If you want him to regret losing you, to miss you like crazy, and yes, even beg you to come back, then stop doing what most people do after a breakup. Stop chasing, stop explaining, stop leaving the door cracked open just in case he changes his mind. Because the moment you pull your energy away, truly and completely, is the moment he starts to feel your absence in a way that stings. You see, silence, when it comes from confidence, not spite, is magnetic. When you upgrade your life without announcing it, when you stop explaining your worth and start living it, when you detach with grace and power, it shifts something deep inside him. He starts to feel the emotional gap. The access he once had is now gone. Your energy, your attention, your presence, it disappears. And the twist, it's not when you want him to come back that he does. It's when you don't need him to. When you're living like you'd never take him back, that's when the chase begins. Because nothing is more attractive than someone who doesn't need you to notice them, yet is suddenly all you can think about. You see, one of the biggest mistakes people make when they feel someone pulling away is they immediately reach out. They want to fix it. They want to understand. They want to say, can we talk? They want to do something. And I get it. It comes from a place of panic, from fear, from love even. But here's the truth. The moment you chase someone who's already stepping back, you reinforce the very reason they're pulling away. You make yourself smaller, more available, more eager. And in doing that, you strip away your mystery. You erase the contrast between your presence and your absence. But if instead you disappear with purpose, if you go quiet, not as a way to punish them, not as a way to make them feel bad, but as a decision rooted in self-respect, everything changes. Silence, when it comes from dignity, not drama, speaks louder than any words ever could. And I'm not talking about disappearing and sitting by the phone, hoping they notice. That's not real space. That's just waiting in disguise. What I mean is genuinely pulling your energy back, taking the spotlight off of them and putting it back on you, focusing on your life, your healing, your momentum. That's what makes someone feel your absence. When you disappear with purpose, you allow someone to experience the consequences of losing access to your energy. And let me tell you something. If you were a real presence in their life, if you brought value, stability, kindness, laughter, emotional safety, then trust me, your absence will be noticed. But it only gets noticed if you stop showing up. You stop checking in. You stop liking their posts. You stop orbiting their world. You stop being available for breadcrumbs. You simply exit, not with a slam of the door, not with a dramatic message, not with a final essay about how hurt you are, but with grace, quiet, calm, self-assured grace. That's the kind of silence that makes a person stop and think. That's the kind of silence that whispers, I know what I bring to the couple of times. I don't need to beg anyone to sit down. It's counterintuitive. Everything in your emotions is telling you to reach for them. But the power lies in resisting that urge. Because every time you reach when they're pulling back, you're saying, I'm okay with being in a one-sided relationship. You're teaching them that they can give less and still have you. But when you don't chase, when you don't react, you create a space where they have to feel your absence and decide what to do with it. And here's what happens. The person who thought they could leave and still keep your attention begins to feel the shift. They don't get to feel adored by you from a distance anymore. The emotional safety net is gone. The echo of your love is fading. And that's when the panic sets in for them. That's when they go, wait, did I just lose something real? And whether they come back or not, that's not even the point anymore. Because when you disappear with purpose, something bigger happens. You come back to yourself. You reclaim your time, your mind, your peace. You realize you don't need them to choose you for you to feel chosen. You already chose yourself. But if they do come back, and in many cases they will, It won't be because you begged or chased. It won't be because you convinced them. It'll be because they felt the difference between having your energy and not having it. And that difference, that contrast, it's what makes them realize how much they miss it, how much they miss you. So when you feel that urge to send the long text, to ask for closure, to reach out with love in hopes of getting love back, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, am I doing this because I respect myself or because I'm afraid to lose someone who's already letting go? Then choose silence, not as a weapon, but as a form of clarity. Walk away not out of anger, but out of calm self-trust. Disappear, not to be chased, but to reconnect with your own strength. Because when you do that, when you vanish with intention, he will feel the loss. He'll feel the weight of your absence. And if he truly valued you, if he ever really saw you, he will beg to come back. You know what happens when most people go through a breakup or get ghosted by someone they cared about? They sit in that space of loss and feel like they have to prove something. They think, if I can just show him how hurt I am, maybe he'll understand what he's done. Maybe he'll come back. But here's the truth. Pain isn't what makes someone come back. Power is. When someone pulls away, our first instinct is to try to pull them back, to reach out, to explain, to show them how much we care. But that instinct is based on fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of not being enough. Fear that they're already replacing us. So we act fast, we react emotionally, and we end up looking desperate. Not because we are desperate, but because we gave them all the power to validate us. Let me ask you something. What if, instead of trying to pull back, you pulled yourself forward? When someone leaves, your world shrinks. Suddenly, the things that mattered, your goals, your friendships, your passions, they fade into the background. That's when you have to fight. That's when you take all that energy you were pouring into him and you redirect it into the most transformative thing you can do, your own life. And no, I'm not talking about just putting on makeup and posting a few pretty pictures on Instagram to make him jealous. I'm talking about a real upgrade. The kind where you start reading again. The kind where you hit the gym, not because you're trying to get him back, but because you're taking care of your body like it's sacred again. The kind where you finally book that trip, take that class, start that side hustle you've been putting off for months. You start surrounding yourself with people who energize you. You stop explaining yourself to the ones who don't. You get busy building a life that's so rich, so full, that you actually forget to check if he's watched your story. And here's the part most people don't understand. The moment you truly begin to detach, he feels it. Not because you texted him, not because you told him how much you've grown, but because he no longer feels your emotional presence. That energy he once took for granted, it's gone. He no longer has access to your validation, your loyalty, your warmth. And for someone who thought you'd always be there, that silence is deafening. People don't beg for what's always available. They beg for what they suddenly realize is valuable. And you can't show value through words. You show it by disappearing from their world and reappearing in your own. Stronger, wiser, glowing from the inside out. And yes, sometimes he will come back. He'll start liking your photos again. He'll text her, hey, how have you been? Like nothing happened. But by then, if you've really done the work, you won't even need him to, because you'll have become someone who no longer waits to be chosen. You'll realize you are the prize. The best part, this isn't a game. This isn't manipulation. This is the most honest thing you can do. Because when you focus on you, when you upgrade your life from the inside out, you don't just make him notice what he lost. You make yourself see what you gained. So no, don't text him. Don't try to make him miss you. Instead, start living a life that you miss being in, the kind that lights you up again. Because the second you stop needing him to come back is the second he starts wondering if he even had a chance to begin with. That's the moment he'll beg, stop explaining your worth, start living it. You know what we do too often when someone pulls away from us? When they go cold? When they stop showing up the way they used to? We go into defense mode. We start trying to prove ourselves. We send long messages explaining how much we cared, how loyal we were, how misunderstood we feel. We think if we just give them enough context, enough emotion, enough of our side of the story, maybe they'll get it. Maybe they'll see our value again. But here's the truth. Value doesn't need a monologue. It doesn't need an essay. Value is demonstrated by how we carry ourselves, especially when someone fails to recognize it. Because the moment you start over-explaining your worth, you've already given it away. You've placed it in someone else's hands and said, please, understand me so I can feel worthy again. That's not attractive. That's not magnetic. That's desperate. If someone walks away or goes distant, and your first instinct is to beg, plead, or convince, you've already made them the decision maker of your value. And once they feel that power imbalance, they lose the very thing that kept them curious about you in the first place. They don't feel the need to chase because you've made it too easy to access you, even after they stop showing up. Now listen, I get it. You're not doing it because you're weak. You're doing it because you care. Because you feel like there's unfinished business, because your heart is invested. But the problem is, caring doesn't mean we lose our dignity. Caring doesn't mean we lower our standard for what kind of love we deserve. Here's what I want you to do instead. I want you to start living your value. That means you stop texting someone who's ignoring you. You stop showing up for someone who's no longer emotionally present. You stop trying to hold a connection together by yourself. And instead, you redirect that energy into yourself, into your goals, into your friendships, into your physical and emotional well-being, into your life. Because the moment you stop giving all that love to someone who didn't know what to do with it and start giving it to yourself, that's when everything starts to shift. That's when they feel the absence. That's when they start questioning, did I misjudge this person? Did I lose someone incredible? But you don't do it for that moment. You do it because you've remembered something. Your worth was never up for negotiation. It was never on trial. It was always there. You just forgot it while trying to make someone else see it. And that's the real transformation. You stop performing and start embodying. You stop hoping for validation and start walking in truth. You stop waiting for their recognition and start giving yourself permission to move forward. That's when you become unforgettable. Not because you screamed your value from the rooftops, not because you begged them to reconsider, but because you walked away with self-respect, because you chose peace over proving, because you chose growth over closure. People remember energy. They remember how they felt around you. But more than that, they remember the shift. They remember when you were accessible and then suddenly, not out of spite, but out of clarity, you were gone. Emotionally, physically, mentally gone. Focused on your own lane. That's when they start wondering. That's when they feel the pull, because the strongest gravitational force isn't desperation, it's self-possession. You want someone to come back? Don't chase. Don't convince. Don't perform. Just live so powerfully, so beautifully, so confidently that their only thought is, how did I ever let that go? Let your life be the message. Let your presence be the proof. Let your absence be the lesson. When someone walks away from you, it's easy to internalize that as rejection. You start to believe the story that maybe you weren't good enough. Maybe you didn't try hard enough. Maybe if you had just said the right thing or loved them in the right way, they would have stayed. But here's the truth you need to hear. You weren't rejected. You were redirected. And I want you to really take that in. Because the moment you stop seeing the end of a relationship as a personal failure, and start seeing it as a powerful redirection, you reclaim your control, your confidence, and your sense of peace. We've been taught to see relationships as success or failure. If it lasts, it's a win. If it ends, it's a loss. But what if the breakup wasn't the universe punishing you, so protecting you? What if it was pulling you out of something that was never going to give you the love you deserve and pushing you towards something better, a version of life and of you that you hadn't even met yet? When you shift your narrative from "I was rejected" to "I was redirected," you stop trying to make sense of someone else's choices through the lens of your self-worth. You stop measuring your value by how much someone wanted to stay. Their decision to walk away becomes theirs, not a verdict on your desirability, not a statement about your worth, but simply a choice they made based on where they are in their journey, not where you are in yours. Now, here's where things get interesting. That shift in perspective, it's magnetic. When you stop chasing clarity from someone who left and instead give yourself closure, that changes your energy. You're no longer reaching out, trying to make them see what they lost. You're too focused on becoming someone who knows what she brings to the table and doesn't wait for someone to validate it. The reality is, people feel that. He will feel that. The same person who may have taken your presence for granted begins to notice the absence, not just of you, but of your energy, because you've stopped orbiting around him. You're not waiting for a message. You're not posting cryptic stories, hoping he sees them. You're not crafting your day around what he might be thinking. You're investing that energy back into yourself. And the moment he sees you no longer living in the story of "I need him to come back to feel whole again," that's when the power dynamic flips. Because your self-worth no longer depends on him recognizing it. You recognize it. And when you recognize it, your standards elevate. You're no longer impressed by breadcrumbs. You're not interested in recycled attention. You don't light up just because he noticed you again. That was the old you. The new you, she doesn't need convincing. She's busy creating. What tends to happen in these moments is he starts feeling that gap. That emotional safety you used to provide, gone. That loyal presence you once offered without asking for much in return, missing. And the silence, not the manipulative kind, but the peaceful, self-respecting kind, becomes deafening. Because it reflects a woman who has nothing to prove anymore. She's not bitter, not angry, just done. That's when it hits him. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped trying. Not because you begged, but because you breathed deeply, freely, and independently. And in that space, in that quiet transformation, something happens that no grand gesture or emotional plea could ever accomplish. He starts to wonder, wait, did I just lose something I didn't even fully understand I had? But here's the key. By the time he feels that, you've already started living a new life. You're not sitting by the phone. You're not scripting conversations in your head. You're not hoping he knocks on your door with flowers and an apology. You've moved from hoping for closure to creating peace, from obsessing over his absence to falling in love with your own presence. This isn't about making him chase. It's not about manipulation or games. It's about alignment. When you shift into alignment with your own self-worth, the people who once took you for granted have no choice but to notice. And some of them, yes, they will beg to come back. Not because you demanded it, but because your growth, your joy, your stillness made it impossible for them to forget what they lost. And maybe, just maybe, by then, you won't want them back. When someone loses access to your energy, your empathy, your consistency, that's when the void begins to set in. And I'm not talking about playing games or trying to manipulate someone's emotions. I'm talking about the natural gap that forms when you stop over-investing in someone who stopped appreciating what you brought to the table. So many people think, if I just explain myself one more time. Maybe he'll get it. Maybe he'll finally understand what I was trying to give him. But here's the truth. People rarely value what's constantly available. And when you're always there, always texting first, always showing up, even after he pulls away, there's no space for him to miss you. There's no contrast between life with you and life without you. That's where the emotional gap comes in. See, it's not just about being gone physically. You could still be in the same room. But if your emotional energy, your warmth, your care, your attention is no longer being poured into him, he feels that absence. That emotional withdrawal, when done from a place of self-respect, not punishment, is what starts to stir something inside of him. Think about it. When someone has constant access to your affection, they start to assume it's permanent, it becomes a given. But the moment you step back, not with hostility, not with bitterness, but with quiet certainty, that's when the air shifts. That's when the comfort starts to crack. He remembers how it felt when you believed in him, when you laughed at his dumb jokes, when you sent that thoughtful message on a random Tuesday just because. He starts to notice the silence where your encouragement used to live. He senses the difference when your energy is no longer orbiting around his. It's subtle at first. Maybe he notices that you're not the first like on his story, or that your usual check-in texts aren't coming through, and he wonders, is she okay? Did I do something? But as days pass and your energy stays pulled back, not cold, but simply no longer chasing, he starts to feel the weight of that space. What most people don't realize is that connection doesn't die with silence. In fact, silence can echo louder than words ever could, especially when that silence comes from someone who used to be a safe place. And when he feels that, not in a moment of anger, but in the calm, steady removal of your presence, it hits different. It's not about trying to make him suffer. It's not about hoping he falls apart without you. It's about finally allowing him to feel what he's been numb to all along. The fact that what you were offering wasn't ordinary, that your loyalty wasn't standard, that your effort wasn't replaceable. And let me be clear, this only works when you're not faking it. When you actually detach, when you stop waiting for him to notice and just start focusing on yourself, that's when the energy becomes real. That's when the shift happens, not just in him, but in you. You stop thinking, how do I get him to come back? And start asking, how do I come back to me? You stop looking at your phone for signs of life and start creating a life that doesn't need a text to feel full. And yet, paradoxically, that's often the exact moment when he starts to circle back. Because now he's feeling something he never had to feel before. The gap, the emotional drop-off, the loss of your presence. And if he valued you deep down, even if he didn't show it before, that feeling is going to shake him. He'll start remembering the way you looked at him, the way you showed up even when it was inconvenient, the way your energy lit up the space between you two. And suddenly, he's not just thinking about you, he's missing you. He's longing for the emotional security, the kindness, the passion that came so naturally from you. But now it's on your terms. Because the moment he comes back, if he does, he's not walking into the same situation. He's walking into the new standard you've set. He's meeting the version of you that doesn't need validation from his return, but chooses who gets access to your energy based on how they value it. And that's the power of letting someone feel the emotional gap. It's not about revenge. It's about reverence for yourself, for your time, for your peace. Because when someone loses access to what made you special and you let them feel that fully, that's when the real wake-up call happens. Sometimes the most powerful message you'll ever send is your silence. Live like you'd never take him back. And that's when he'll chase. See, most people think that if they want someone to come back, they need to keep showing that person they're still available. They leave the door open just a crack. They post things that feel just a little too curated, hoping he'll notice. They answer messages the moment he finally throws them a breadcrumb. They think, if I don't respond quickly, he'll lose interest. If I act too indifferent, he'll move on completely. But here's the paradox. The more available you are after he walks away, the less value you communicate. You're signaling that he can leave and return whenever it suits him. Now, this isn't about being cold or manipulative. This is about reclaiming your power and choosing to live in a way that says, I've already moved on. Because when someone feels that they've truly lost access to you, not in a spiteful way, but in a genuinely grounded, self-respecting way, that's when it triggers something inside them. That's when the comfort of knowing you're there begins to dissolve. That's when curiosity creeps in. And that curiosity, it can become a powerful motivator. But the key here is authenticity. You can't fake moving on. You can't pretend to be thriving while secretly checking your phone every 10 minutes, hoping he'll text. You can't post a story with a mystery guy's elbow in the corner and expect that to stir something deep and meaningful. That kind of behavior isn't powerful. It's transparent, and it puts you right back in the energy of trying to impress him, trying to get a reaction, trying to control the outcome. The real shift happens when you actually start living like you wouldn't take him back. When you stop asking, what can I do to make him regret leaving? And start asking, what can I do to make me proud of how I'm living? That's when everything changes. Because when you live like that, when you focus on rebuilding your confidence, creating joy without him, surrounding yourself with people who uplift you, and pursuing goals that have nothing to do with your relationship status, you stop orbiting around his absence. You become the sun in your own universe again. And when he sees that you've stopped waiting, when he feels that he no longer has access to your heart, your time, or your energy, that's when it starts to dawn on him. He's no longer a priority in a life he used to be central to. And here's something no one tells you. The moment you cross that emotional threshold, where you genuinely feel indifferent to whether he comes back or not, that's when he'll start to remember all the things he took for granted, the way you listened to him, the way you made him feel understood, the way you rooted for him when no one else did. He won't remember those things when you're still readily available. He remembers them when they're gone. And you know what happens then? He starts to panic. Quietly at first. Maybe he lurks on your stories. Maybe he sends a, hey, just checking in text. Maybe he tries to get mutual friends to casually ask about you. It won't always be some grand romantic gesture right away, because a lot of people don't realize what they had until the silence becomes loud enough to echo. But the real beauty here, the real win, is that you don't even need him to chase. Because when you get to that place where you wouldn't take him back unless he came correct, unless he genuinely showed growth, intention, and the capacity to meet your standards, then even if he comes back, the decision isn't his anymore. It's yours. And it's made from a place of clarity, not desperation. So yes, he might beg, he might plead, he might suddenly see the light. But by then, you'll be living a life so rich in self-worth that whether or not he fits back into it becomes a matter of whether you still want him there. Live like you'd never take him back. Not because you're bitter, but because you finally remembered how incredible it feels to belong fully to yourself again.